Hey everyone, Danielle here. This is my last video in terms of a tutorial that shows how to play Environment D. So this one is the most complex because there are 3 stars that let you know that. But this is also the most similar to the original Cascadia base game. So I find this to be probably the most interesting sheet out of all the sheets, and I think this will probably be the one that takes the longest for me to probably play a solo game of, because the other ones take about 25 to 30 minutes. This would take me about 40 minutes, but that's probably because there's a lot to think about. So if you know anything about Cascadia, you'll understand kind of placement really matters. But if you're new to Cascadia, it's no problem, because I'm going to explain from the perspective of someone who already knows how to play rolling rivers, the basics of rolling the dice, gaining the wildlife, using dice actions to manipulate anything, or gaining additional wildlife on your turn. And then also the foundations of knowing that these are habitat cards. You're using wildlife that you've collected from the dice rolls, and completing these habitats and gaining any bonuses that are below it, utilizing the discounts above it if there are any. And and completing your sheet based off of the habitat card that you decided to complete. So just to start off, this is going to be just very different from the other sheets. So really, you don't have to know much about the other sheets, because this is kind of like a standalone. The other ones kind of were similar. I feel like this is just very different. So when you complete a habitat card, you're going to understand that this tells you the habitat you will be focusing on your sheet. So say we completed this habitat. This one's the river, so you're going to only look at the river tiles. So those are kind of like the river, the bluish looking tiles. So those are the ones you're focusing in on. There is a number 2, so that tells you how many of these river tiles you will be filling in with a letter. So a letter will be filled in based off of the type of wildlife you're putting into that habitat tile. So in this instance, you're looking at also the wildlife that's available on this card to write in 2 of these hexes. So say I decide to write in these 2 hexes, so I'm going to just like circle these 2. I'm writing in these 2 hexes. You don't have to circle it. By writing in them, you will know, but this is just so I'm telling you where I'm writing them. I'm writing them in these 2, and I get to choose from elk, hawk, or salmon. It might be in my best interest to do salmon, so I'll just write the first letter of each of those, so those are S's. And so in these, I will write 2 S's, an S here and an S here. And something to note is that each of these wildlife will have specific scoring criteria. So I will go through each of these in a moment, but I do want to focus on the map first. Next, say I completed this habitat card. I'll be able to look at these hexes, which are the green ones, and write up to 3 of these wildlife letters in there. So for instance, I will focus in on writing down hawks. So I will choose 1 hawk. I will write 1 more hawk here. And then maybe I'll write a fox. So I put an F down here. So the number was 3. I wrote down 3 letters in 3 of those green tiles. And I only wrote letters that belong to the wildlife that's on the habitat card. So I could not have written B for bear or S for salmon. So you'll notice also there are bonuses in between hex tiles. For instance, because I completed these 2 tiles that surround basically this nature token, I'll be able to gain that nature token onto my sheet. Similarly, if I were to complete a habitat card that put something here, I'll put F for fox. This is now fully surrounded, so I get to gain this bonus, which is just marking off any of the habitats. So I'll gain that, and I'll say I will put a salmon here. All right, so that's how those bonuses will work. There is an overflow if you happen to complete all of the hex tiles for one habitat, and you completed a card that required you to continue filling in those habitats. You'll continue left to right, gaining bonus points or additional hex markings. So in terms of scoring, you do want to make sure that you are writing the letters of these wildlife in a very strategic way, so you're maximizing your score. So in order to do that, you want to know that bears, they score for each pair of 2 adjacent bears, and pairs may not be adjacent to other pairs. So that's what that diagram means. For elks, it scores for lines of elk based on the length of the line. Lines of elk may be adjacent to one another, but each elk may only be counted as part of a single line for scoring. So if you have 4 elks that are close together, basically adjacent in a line, they have to be in the line, then you have 7 points. You could get 4 points for 3 that are in a line. So a line means they're in a straight line, they're not bending or anything, they're just in a line. For foxes, it scores for each fox based on whether there are animals in the 6 spaces surrounding it. So if a fox is surrounded by 6 animals of any type, it scores 2 points. If it's surrounded by 2 to 5 animals of any type, it scores 1 point. If it's surrounded by 0 to 1 animals, it doesn't score. So it's important that you end up putting foxes probably somewhere in the middle of the map versus on the edges where there's not too much opportunity to be surrounded. So for hawks, they score based on total number of hawks that are not adjacent to any other hawks. So they really have to be just standalone, and they might be good for the edges in that case. So depending on how many of those you have, you'll be able to score up to 21 points if you have 12 hawks that are not adjacent to one another. That's a lot of points you get. And then lastly, we have salmon. It scores for runs of salmon based on the run length. So a run is defined as a group of adjacent salmon, where each salmon is adjacent to no more than 2 other salmon. So that means a group of 3 salmon in a triangle may not count, it may count as a run, but no other salmon can be attached to this run. So we have to make sure that it's in one specific line. If there's any other salmon surrounding it, that's not going to work. It has to kind of just be an independent line. And that might be the most confusing one to score in my opinion. But once you get the hang of it, it does make a lot of sense. Basically, there can't be any salmon around the line that you're trying to score for. And the longest line would be worth 12 points, which is 7 or more salmon. Okay. There are also habitat completion bonuses. So if you're able to complete them, you get 3 points each. So that's pretty good. Something to keep in mind. And then we have a wildlife diversity bonus. So for each of the 5 different wildlife that you end up completing, you get 3 points each. All right. So I think that basically covers this sheet. Hopefully everything made sense. I'm just going to double check that I didn't miss anything. All right. Let me know if you have any questions about this sheet. Again, I do think this is probably one of the more complex ones compared to the others, but it is still manageable. Especially if you've played Cascadia before, this is going to be pretty easy for you to understand. All right, as always, I appreciate you guys watching. If I've made any mistakes in how I presented the rulings for this, definitely let me know, but this is not an official tutorial. This is just how I interpreted the rules and how I am currently playing. They'll always reference the official rules for how to play. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more of these types of videos, let me know, where I'm just kind of going over the rules. I think it could be helpful versus watching a whole playthrough and hoping they go over something that you were looking for. But yeah, I'd like to try this format a little bit more and see what happens, but I would also like your opinion as well. Alright, as always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.